My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then secretly transferred $250, $0 from our joint account into his business. Now she's claiming I have no right to our house or the money, and I just found out she's been lying for years. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. Honestly, if you knew the whole story, you'd think it was straight out of a bad soap opera. The craziest part. The moment I found out everything was so sudden, so unexpected, it felt like my world was shattering in real time. It started with little things, her avoiding my gaze, secretive texts late nights, but I brushed it off, convinced she was just stressed or working late. Turns out I was wrong, dead wrong. Her name. We've been married for 8 years and I thought we had a good thing going. She was always bitchy, yeah, but she was also smart, ambitious, and I thought loyal. We had a nice house, decent jobs, a life that looked perfect from the outside. I was a project manager at a construction firm. She was a marketing exec. We didn't have kids, and honestly, I never really wanted them. I was content with our routine, even if she could be a pain to deal with sometimes. But over the last few months, I started noticing strange things. She'd be on her phone more than usual, and when I'd ask about it, she'd brush me off with some excuse about work or a friend. She also started coming home later, an hour, sometimes two, without telling me where she'd been. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I caught her in a lie. I saw her deleting texts on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, and her stories about where she'd gone just didn't add up. One night, I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. I know, that's invasive, but I was desperate. When I unlocked it, I found a string of messages between her and our neighbor, Jake. The texts weren't just friendly, they were flirtatious, suggestive even. They talked about sneaking around, about how much they wanted to be together, and she even called him, the one who makes her feel alive. That was the moment I realized everything I'd suspected was true. But that wasn't even the worst. I decided to dig deeper. I looked at our joint bank account online, something I rarely did, just to see if anything looked off. And it was a shocker. There in bold letters was a transfer of $250, $0 from our account into some account linked to Jake's business. I couldn't believe it. We had that money saved for a house, for emergencies, for our future, and she just transferred it like it was nothing. That's when I knew she was not just cheating on me, she was stealing from us. I confronted her the next morning. I told her I knew about the affair and the money transfer. Her face twisted with anger and contempt. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, and that I had no right to accuse her of anything. She said I was just insecure, jealous, and that I was imagining things. She even had the nerve to say I was accusing her of cheating and stealing because I was insecure about our marriage. But I wasn't just accusing her. I had the evidence right in front of me, and her reaction told me she knew she'd been caught. The thing is, her reaction didn't just hurt. It made me feel stupid for trusting her all these years. I started questioning everything. Our relationship, her loyalty, whether I even knew her at all. It's like I was living with a stranger hiding behind a mask of a wife I thought I knew. I felt angry and betrayed, but also confused. How could someone lie so effortlessly, steal so blatantly, and then turn around and deny it all? That's when I started thinking about what I needed to do next, whether I should fight for what's right or just cut my losses and walk away. But I knew one thing, this wasn't just a betrayal. It was an all-out attack on everything I believed in. After confronting that morning, the air in the house felt heavier than I could have ever imagined. She was furious, throwing around words like paranoid, crazy, and delusional. She insisted I was blowing things out of proportion, that the money transfer was just a mistake or some kind of accounting error. She even had the audacity to claim I was stalking her, that I was insecure and controlling. The way she looked at me with that sneer made my stomach turn. I'd known her for years, but that moment made me realize I'd been living with a lie, her lie. I decided I had to know more. I spent the rest of that day digging into her phone, her bank accounts, her emails. I wanted to understand how deep this all went. That's when I found out she'd been lying to me for years about her whereabouts, her contacts, her finances. She'd been sneaking around, hiding money, and lying about her late nights. It was like I was married to a stranger who had been pretending to be my wife for a long time. And the worst part, the money she transferred, she claimed it was for her business, but I found out she'd been funneling it into Jake's company, which was just a front for his shady dealings. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. Anger, heartbreak, confusion. I'd always thought we had a decent life, a partnership. Turns out, she was planning her escape or maybe just using me as a cover. I felt so betrayed I could barely breathe. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it. Earlier, how I missed the signs, her secretive phone habits, her evasiveness, the way she'd snap at me for asking questions. How could she lie to my face for so long? How could she pretend everything was fine while secretly cheating and stealing from us? I started to formulate a plan. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd come clean. I needed leverage, evidence, a way to make her see I wasn't going to be played anymore. I also needed to protect what was ours, our house, the money, everything. I realized she might try to take everything, especially after I discovered the transfer, so I contacted a lawyer that night. I wanted to understand my rights, what I could do to stop her from draining our accounts further or transferring more money. The lawyer told me I had a solid case, but I needed to act fast. That night, I felt a strange mixture of resolve and dread. I was angry enough to tear her apart, but deep down, I knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't let her spin any more lies or manipulate me. I knew she'd try to deny everything, probably accuse me of being unstable or jealous. But I had enough proof now, screenshots, bank statements, her own texts. I was ready to fight, not just for the money or the house, but for whatever shred of dignity I had left. I couldn't believe I was saying this, but I was already planning my next move, gathering evidence, preparing for a confrontation, and most of all, figuring out how to protect myself emotionally from whatever storm was coming. The next few days were a whirlwind. I stayed up late every night, poring over bank statements, texts, emails, anything that could give me more clarity. Kept denying everything, acting like I was crazy or paranoid. She'd throw tantrums, call me controlling, accuse me of spying on her. Honestly, it was exhausting. Every time she yelled, I felt this mixture of anger and sadness, like I was losing the woman I thought I knew. But I refused to back down. I knew I had to be strategic, especially since she was trying to gaslight me into doubting myself. One night, I decided the best move was to set a trap. I left my phone open, with a recording app running in the background, just in case she slipped up. I also installed some discreet monitoring on her computer. I needed hard proof, not just my suspicions. That same night, I caught her on a call with Jake. Her voice was flirtatious, almost desperate. She kept saying how she couldn't wait to get out of this marriage, how she was planning to leave everything behind, our house, the money, everything. Her words made my stomach turn. It felt like I was watching a nightmare unfold in real time. The following morning, I confronted her again. This time, I had the recordings and evidence to back me up. I played the conversation on speakerphone and her face went pale. She tried to deny it, but I'd already seen the bank transfer, the texts, the emails. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I was going to lawyer up and take everything I could, our house, the money, whatever she'd stolen or tried to hide. Her reaction was pure contempt. She said I had no right to anything, that I was just some insecure husband trying to control her. She even said I was lucky if I even got a piece of the house after. She was done with me. That moment was a turning point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. She'd lied for years, cheated, stole. She'd even tried to manipulate me into thinking I was the crazy one. I felt so betrayed, so angry I could barely hold it together. But at the same time, I was relieved that I finally had proof. It felt like I was finally waking up from a nightmare. I called my lawyer again, and we started drawing up papers for separation. I knew I needed to protect my rights and assets. I also started thinking about how I'd tell my family, my friends, how I'd explain that the woman I loved had been hiding all this from me. In the midst of all this chaos, kept trying to spin her version of events. She claimed I was making everything up, that she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. She called me paranoid again, said I was just insecure and jealous. But her words felt hollow now. I saw through her lies. I knew she was planning her escape, maybe even trying to get ahead before I could do anything about it. The thought that she'd betray me like this, that she'd betray everything we'd built, left me feeling numb. I realized I had to act fast before she took everything and disappeared. I spent that day gathering everything I needed: proof, legal advice, plans for the next steps. I knew this wasn't just about money or the house. It was about trust, respect, and my own sanity. I couldn't keep living under her shadow, questioning everything, wondering when the next betrayal would come. I decided I'd fight for what's mine, for what's rightfully mine, and I'd do it without her twisting my words or manipulating me any further. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined. This was the beginning of the end of whatever nightmare she'd created. The days that followed were some of the most intense of my life. I moved quickly, hired a lawyer who specialized in marital property and betrayal cases. We went over everything: proof of her affair, the illegal transfer of funds, her attempts to hide assets. I felt like I was finally taking control, but at the same time I was constantly on edge, waiting for her to do something even more manipulative or destructive. Was still acting like she was the victim, crying, screaming, trying to turn everyone against me. It was almost laughable how she played the victim, even as I had hard evidence in hand. One evening she came home late again, smelling like perfume and alcohol. She was bitchy, snappy, and refused to look me in the eye. That's when I decided I'd had enough of her lies. I confronted her directly, told her I knew about her plans to run away with Jake, that I had all the proof I needed. Her face twisted, and she snapped back with her usual venom, calling me paranoid, insecure, and saying I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She even claimed I was just upset because I'd lost control. That moment, I snapped. I told her she could spin her stories all she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her ruin me anymore. I told her I was filing for divorce and taking everything I could legally claim. I explained that I had evidence of her stealing our money, her affair, and her lies. I was done being played. Her reaction: she threw a glass across the room, screaming that I was a controlling bastard, that I didn't deserve her, and that she'd make sure I never got a dime of what was ours. She said I'd regret trying to take her down, that she'd fight me every step of the way. That night, I stayed up late. I was angry, yes, but also relieved that I finally had a plan. I knew I had to be smart about this. I contacted my lawyer again, and we started the process of filing for divorce, requesting a full accounting of our assets, and preparing to freeze her access to accounts. I also made sure to document everything: her threats, her lies, her attempts to hide money. I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down, not now, not ever. The most surreal part was her trying to gaslight me even as I had all the evidence. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just a jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle her success. She claimed I was making everything up, that she loved me and had done nothing wrong. But I knew better. I could see her desperation, her fear of losing everything she'd secretly been building behind my back. And honestly, I felt a strange mixture of disgust and pity. Disgust for what she'd done, and pity because I realized I'd been blind for so long. As I prepared for the legal fight ahead, I kept thinking about the future. What kind of person does this? How could she betray me like this, cheat, steal, lie, while pretending to be the perfect wife? I felt so betrayed, so broken, but also oddly relieved. This nightmare was finally coming to an end. I'd be damned if I let her take me down with her. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, for my dignity and for the truth. That's what kept me going through those long, sleepless nights. I knew I had to stand tall, no matter how much she tried to drag me down. The legal process moved faster than I expected, probably because I had all my ducks in a row. My lawyer filed the paperwork for divorce, and we immediately requested a freeze on her bank accounts and any assets she might try to hide or transfer. I also demanded a full financial disclosure. She wasn't going to get away with pretending she had nothing to do with the money transfer or the affair. I wanted transparency, and I was prepared to fight for every penny she'd stolen or tried to keep from me. Of course, didn't take this well. She went into full attack mode, calling me controlling, paranoid, and a jealous lunatic. She accused me of trying to ruin her, of being insecure because she'd been more successful at her career. She even tried to manipulate our friends and family, telling them I was making baseless accusations and that I was the one at fault for everything. But I had the evidence, and I made sure everyone knew I wasn't just some paranoid husband. This was real, and she was the one who lied, cheated, and stole. One day, I caught her trying to transfer more money out of our joint account, this time into an account she'd set up under a fake name. I had a feeling she was planning to run, to disappear with whatever she could. I called the bank immediately, froze her access, and alerted my lawyer. That was the moment I realized how determined she was to leave with everything, even if it meant destroying what little trust we'd left. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had the evidence and I was ready to fight her in court. The confrontation with got nastier. She accused me of being a terrible husband, said I was just insecure and controlling and that I didn't deserve her. She even claimed I was the one cheating, just a desperate attempt to shift blame. It was classic gaslighting, and honestly I felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could she be so cold, so manipulative? I knew she was trying to turn everyone against me, but I refused to let her win. I had the proof and I was prepared to use it. One night I sat in my empty house, realizing how much I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, and she'd repaid me with lies, betrayal, and theft. I felt broken, but also strangely relieved. I knew I was finally taking control of my life again. I decided that once the divorce was finalized, I'd start over. I'd rebuild from this mess, stronger and smarter. I also made a promise to myself. I'd never let anyone manipulate or betray me like this again. The hardest part was accepting that I might never fully understand why she did this. Was it just greed, lust, a need for validation, or all of the above? I don't have the answers, and honestly, I probably never will. But I do know one thing: I'm done being the victim. I'm done trusting blindly. I've learned that sometimes the people closest to you can betray you the most. And the only way to survive that kind of betrayal is to take control, stand your ground, and fight for what's rightfully yours. That's what I intend to do. The final court date came sooner than I expected, but I was ready. Everything was laid out: proof of her affair, the illegal transfer of funds, her attempts to hide assets, and her manipulative lies. I watched her sit across from me, her face pale but her eyes still full of that same contempt she always carried. She tried her best to look innocent, to spin her stories, but the judge wasn't falling for it. Not this time. I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion as the proceedings wrapped up. When the judge finally ruled, it was clear she wasn't getting away with anything. The court awarded me the house, the remaining funds in our joint account, and ordered her to pay back the stolen money plus some punitive damages for her deceit. I could see the frustration in her eyes, but I didn't care. Justice, at last, was on my side. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, like I'd finally taken control of my life again after months of chaos. After everything was finalized, I moved out of the house. I didn't want to stay in that place filled with so many painful memories. I found a small apartment nearby, a fresh start, away from her lies and manipulations. It was tough at first: no more shared routines, no more familiar comfort. But it was also a relief to be free from her shadow. I started rebuilding my life, focusing on my career, my friends, and my own peace of mind. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that even in the darkest moments, you have to stand your ground. I learned that sometimes you have to be ruthless to protect what's yours. And most importantly, I learned not to ignore the signs. Sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight, and you just have to be brave enough to see it. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ignore your instincts. No matter how much you love someone, if they start hiding things, lying, or betraying your trust, listen to that voice inside. Because the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, it can change your life forever. I'm still healing, still recovering from the betrayal, but I'm also stronger now. I know what I deserve, and I won't settle for less. Life goes on, and so will I.